An extraordinary power. Man-made mountains. Bodies torn to pieces. Millions of people buried alive. What this history has seen, one of the most powerful and cruel rulers. The story of the first Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huang. You may be seeing an ordinary mountain right now, covered with trees, and a hill that has no meaning when viewed from the outside. But this hill hides a deep secret underneath. The tomb of Qin Shi, who had the passion for immortality. When it was done, from the largest Egyptian pyramid. And you can't even imagine what's inside. The tomb was built in the shape of a palace. Rivers of mercury flowing inside. Both represent oceans, and by allowing the stars on the ceiling to reflect, it created a visual feast. In different rooms, forced to die by drinking poison. With his clothes and personal belongings, bones were uncovered. But what makes the tomb so famous is, while archaeologists continue their excavations, they never expected. They found that the tomb complex was the largest part, and they came across an unimaginable sight. More than 8,000 terracotta soldiers. After the death of Emperor Qin Shi, to continue his reign. It was just waiting in perfect order. These soldiers who were given a terracotta army. Each one. Archaeologists continuing to dig. Horse-drawn carriages with drivers and harness. Vizier's servants. Even in your eternal sleep. Even musicians and clowns were removed. Musical instruments, each made of clay. Weapons, armors. There were items. Approximately 8,000 of them have been unearthed and are on display. Continues to be found underground day by day. The largest tomb complex in world history. In the construction of this structure, which is considered as more than 100,000 civilians were employed. But the emperor has such a secret in his tomb that it's not easy for the human soul to handle this. The tomb was not only built with building materials, hundreds of thousands of Chinese forced to work. Those who died were mixed into the mortar. It was used as part of the tomb construction, but the very lucky ones were buried in mass graves. A terribly overwhelming force. Well, it's just Qin Shi's grave. If so, how do you think his life is? History. Instead of the head of the Qin dynasty, one of these kingdoms. A boy who is only 13 years old passes by. A kid who won't get out of trouble until he grows up. The first disaster came through his mother. His mother to the palace. And against that ambitious lover Qin Shi, attempted a coup. However, Qin Shi learned this beforehand and suppressed the coup by tying that bear to the horses with his mother's lover. Cut off his arms and legs alive. Everyone involved in the coup. His mother. He locked himself in a palace room, from which he could never leave again, proving himself against his army and his people. Qin Shi, who thinks he has authority. He now had only one goal: gathering the other 6 kingdoms under one roof. Establish a united state of China. Quickly. Gathering more than 1 million young men from his people. The ancient world has existed until that day. It was not enough to establish an army. Educated these people who were peasants. The 6 kingdoms that could not resist Qin, while falling respectively. He came with a peace offering, the kingdom for the purpose of a positive diplomatic discussion. Messenger in hand. He went up to the king's audience chamber. He swung it to stab him. But the person was a good soldier, and after escaping the dagger with his cloak, he killed the assassin there with his sword, and gave his great command: destroy the kingdom of Rain, plunder their lands, kill all their rulers, execute their soldiers, no matter who tries to escape, tear them apart with their families. Again these days. Famous musician Giorgione, he swore to avenge his friend's death, and infiltrating a musical performance in the palace. To kill the vengeful, he planned to avenge his friend. But one has a guard. Gorgi recognized Hani and understood his plan. But the emperor, as so talented, did not consent to the killing of a musician. Ordered him to continue his musical performance. He even congratulated the musician after the show. After more than 10 years of invasions, which also subjugated all the other 6 kingdoms, brought together under one flag. In the name of this hatred, we call it China today. He is now the first emperor of China. He managed to write his name in history. But gathering the lands under one flag, it was just the first step. To be one people, to be one nation. He needed more. Therefore, throughout the Chinese Empire, alphabet with varying meanings, it will only mean. And created a common Chinese alphabet. Developed a common calendar. Also weight measurements, currencies and prices. Even the width of horse carriages. On all China roads, it was standardized to provide common transportation. Also other dynasties, prevent reunification and control of the country. Created the province and district system. And dividing them into districts below. The empire he founded, turned it into a real state. Even though hatred is a cruel ruler, merit was his most important characteristic. Qualified scientists and viziers, even if they are citizens of an enemy country, they invite. Coming from noble families in the country, training and skills by changing the task system. In other words, he established a promotion system based on merit. He was a resourceful ruler and he proved it. Of course, the tremendously talented diplomat and philosopher. We should not forget their support in many activities. Lynch was a very interesting man. One day the mice in the toilet became weaker and hungrier. And suddenly he realized, because everyone's life is different, there is no set standard for honor. People's values, determined by their social environment. Completely. Instead of always limiting morality to codes, people's, enabling them to do the best they can, given their environmental situation. And until his death. Emperor Qin, largest in Chinese history. Agricultural activities in China by building canals. More than 1 million workers work as a result of this tremendous project. Even today, it is one of the most fertile lands in China. But the problems in the empire were still not over. So much so that a power coming from Central Asia, they were Turks and Mongols, and gold. Turkish and Mongolian raids from Central Asia caused great damage to border areas. These men come from the harsh climate of Asia. They were fast riders and good archers. It was impossible to fight them. Those who came were the children of the steppe. So much so that while a group of raiders were plundering in the north of the country, dozens of independent Turkic and Mongolian groups, he plundered the border towns. Ancient dynasties, he is trying to establish ties with the Turks, both through marriage. So much so that a sad poem from a Chinese princess reads as follows: "My family married me to someone from a far corner of the world, sent to a wild country. The round tent with walls made of felt is my palace. I will only eat. I always dream of my country. I would like to be the yellow swan returning home." The wolves of Central Asia left even Qin helpless. But give that privilege, or a weak act such as establishing a marriage bond, he would feel insulted. He was planning another and more permanent solution, a giant wall that will surround the country from beginning to end. The greatest man-made work in history. A wall built with blood and sweat, i.e. the Great Wall of China. Dynasties before it, he made small-scale sets, but these were small walls that could act against each other. And much bigger, much stronger was needed. Had most of the old embankments demolished. Took as a worker. The slogan was, "Build and continue." More than 3 million people worked in its construction. There are 10,000 towers. It was also used for signaling purposes. Every flag raised by the soldiers in the tower. Qin didn't just build a set. To the deserted areas of the embankment, new cities were also built as police stations. On the Great Wall, more than 1.5 million soldiers are on duty at all times. Enormous. Morning. People continuing heavy construction and either died due to excessive working conditions or committed suicide. As for those who died, on important areas of the embankment, made in width and height, it is also decorated with temples and palaces. The purpose of the set, it was not just protection from Turkish and Mongolian raids. Exile punished rulers, punish for hard labor, and to prevent escape from the country was among these purposes. Enemies captured when an attack occurs, burned to create psychological pressure, being thrown down from the walls. 20 dynasties ruled after him. The Great Wall of China until the 17th century. The person had other problems too. Confucianism adopted by the Chinese people. It can lead to questioning the king's rulings. And its ruler is the servant of the people, was interpreted as, instead of. That is, he decided to establish the philosophy of legalism, although both philosophies have their pros and cons. If legalism, it was a perspective that increased the power of the central authority. Burning all the books, that prevents it, and those who delay the law and hide the books, to be sent into exile, or ordered them to be buried alive. Qin's greatest passion was immortality. Just like Alexander the Great. This was a common thought of all great kings. Actually, I got everything. I am strong as a god, and now I must find immortality. Therefore, sorcerers who are claimed to be 1,000 years old, brought from all over the world, either willingly or by force. First by burying them alive in the ground. He was waiting for them to prove their claims. Ancient alchemists, reading in alchemy books, to the wine he drank. It caused him to add mercury and deteriorate his health. An alchemist to Qin, if he lives without being seen by anyone. And this is Qin located in different cities. By building underground passages between 200 palaces, it caused him to lead a secret life. A man with 200 palaces. An incredible obsession. By the year 211 BC, a rumor started to spread to a region in the lower reaches of the Yellow River. This is also a prophecy of the emperor's death. It was suggested. The vindictive sent a diplomat to investigate the situation. Meteor falling was real, but the prophecy had to be destroyed. The incident took place. All the people living around the area were killed, and the pieces of the meteorite were collected one by one. 1 year later, so, by the year 210 BC, years of struggle, because of the fatigue it brings, and alchemists died in his palace. He was 49 years old when he died, and creating a power like the Chinese state, managed to change the whole world forever. One of the greatest architectural engineers in history, accomplished both, and took the lives of almost 10 million people. He would be remembered as a ruler. What was said about? There are also those who claim that it is based on legends, but today we know most of them are true. He was the cruelest person history has ever seen. But he was one of the greatest rulers. Now in his huge tomb he built, he lies there in his eternal sleep. 2,000 years later.